Every so often, a piece of work comes along that feels effortless, simple on the surface, but ends up unlocking a familiar feeling among people, something that unites across cultures and transcends language. Vaseline's Mntana Ka Gogo is one of those moments. What started as a single social post for Heritage Day very quickly became one of the most talked about ads, crossing borders, sparking nostalgia, and reminding people of a feeling they didn't even know they missed. In this episode of The Lead Creative, I sit down with Tumi Moutlana, creative director at VML, and the head of marketing for Vaseline Southern Africa, Kenosi Matsebatlela. We unpack how this deceptively simple idea came to life, why it resonated so widely, and what it tells us about heritage work, insight, cultural nuance, and co-creation between brands and agencies. We explored how the idea of Mntana Ka Gogo first came to shape and the moment the team realized it might be something truly special.
They gave me the headlines and they said, listen, we've got a really cool sort of concept for Heritage Day. It's something we'd have to turn around really quickly. We don't actually have a whole lot of time to go through approvals, rounds and rounds of approvals. But I think what we've hit is really tapping into what PJ or what petroleum jelly means to the consumers that we speak to. And I think because we had a conversation around that this is an idea that's anchored in insights, it's an idea that's anchored in what the product means to people, that gave me a sense of comfort. And I mean, I'll let you in another little secret. I actually hadn't seen the creative until it went live. So it was really an exercise of trust.
Simplicity was a theme that kept coming back. It seems simple now, but getting to simple is almost always the hardest part.
The greatest and most iconic pieces that we've seen in the country are often the most simple ones, you know? So there was that as kind of like, this is the bar. It's simple, but when everybody sees it, you immediately like, oh damn, okay, I get it, I see it. Oh, well done.
Yeah.
So there was we were benchmarking against some of the simplest, most iconic ads.
Then came the cultural insight, why the work landed so widely.
Heritage Day, Heritage Month gives you a platform to amplify the role that your brand plays in people's lives. But I think it was so important for us, specifically on Vaseline, to recognize that the heritage that's linked to Vaseline transcends the different times of years that might be there. Yes, there might be a conversation that we tap into and that we want to start and kick off in Heritage Month because it's the right moment. However, I think what was important for us was just to take it back once again, is that the brand doesn't hold heritage because of what we've done. The brand holds heritage because of where people have taken it.
To help us bring you more inspiring guests who change culture, build brands, and influence society in ways that we don't even realize, please leave us a rating wherever you get your podcasts. This is The Lead Creative. Welcome to The Lead Creative Podcast, where we talk to creative industry leaders, influencers, and brands. We discuss the strategies that influence brand thinking and shape industries. Thought leaders and heads of agencies let us in on some of their thinking and insights. I'm your host, Mongezi Mtati. Enjoy the show and please share and subscribe. Tumi and Kenosi, thanks so much for making the time. Congratulations, first of all, on what has become South Africa's ad of the year, or at least one of the most talked about ads towards the latter part of the year. I'll start with you, Kenosi. What is the one thing that you wish every brief had, even if it's impractical, even if it's unrealistic? What's the one thing that you wish all briefs had?
Okay, as somebody who writes briefs often, I would say that the one thing that I wish we would include in all briefs is room to play. So just an open section. Yeah. I think the importance of a tight brief can't be, downplayed. It's really important to be specific within your brief, to talk through what it is that you're looking for, what the output is. But I think what we often miss in being so specific is leaving room to play, leaving room for an openness to say, where could this idea actually go? So I think every brief now, that we've come through this journey on Vaseline, specifically with this ad, my biggest learning is just to leave space for playing within each brief.
Interesting. Room to play. And you, Tumi?
It's the same. It's a shared sentiment, right? Because it's always, the tug of war between what our partners, our clients want and need in terms of the certain KPIs that they need to hit, right? And that's a real thing for them. There's certain business objectives that they need to hit. A lot of times that, they need to, especially the marketing department gets a lot of flack from the rest of the business. So you guys are spending all this money, but where's the return?
Yeah.
But part of the brand building exercise is when you do get to play, is that you start building that brand love. And we know that brand love over time translates into sales. It really does. There's a lot of South African brands that we can use as an example, that they're now fully entrenched into the hearts, and not just lives, the hearts of South Africans. And by virtue of that, they will be bought in perpetuity. So the room to play is really nice because it allows you just that little bit of extra space to go there and say, no, man, you know what? This is how people actually relate to our brand. Let's play in that territory. Whereas you're not encumbered by all the objectives and this is what we need to do. So it's a shared sentiment, what Kenosi said, just the room to play.
I'll come back to you, Kenosi. So from the outsider's perspective, which I am to this particular campaign, the Mntana Ka Gogo campaign or post, and we can discuss that in more detail, feels deceptively simple, and yet it unlocked something really profound for all South Africans. When you first heard the idea presented, what about it that made you feel like this is the one?
So, it's a funny story because the way the idea was presented to me was really in passing. We were at a Vaseline Men event. Tumi and our petroleum jelly brand lead come up to me and essentially hijacked me, is what I'll call it. But essentially, they gave me the headlines and they said, listen, we've got a really cool sort of concept for Heritage Day. It's something we'd have to turn around really quickly. We don't actually have a whole lot of time to go through approvals, rounds and rounds of approvals. But I think what we've hit is really tapping into what PJ, what petroleum jelly means to the consumers that we speak to. And I think because we had a conversation around that this is an idea that's anchored in insights, it's an idea that's anchored in what the product means to people, that gave me a sense of comfort. And I mean, I'll let you in another little secret. I actually hadn't seen the creative until it went live. So it was really an exercise of trust. But the reason, I think that I bought into what was essentially being put in front of me was because we were speaking about our people at the end of the day, and we're speaking about how do we resonate with the people who actually use and purchase our products. And I think that's what, when you speak about simplicity, that's what this idea tapped into.
To me, simplicity often comes, it looks simple after the fact. We always talk about this, right? We always talk about when you see a campaign, it seems simple because the insight lands, everything really makes sense. But actually to land at that simplicity, you start from a very complex point, from the point of trying to solve a big business problem. Was it always simple, or did you land at simplicity after going through many routes?
So it's a yes and a no, right? So the idea itself in its inception, amongst the many routes that we explored, was in fact that simple. But when we briefed it in, it was an open brief to all the creatives that work on Unilever in our studio. The guys explored. Obviously, we played. We played, and we were like, okay, we could go there, and it was specifically around heritage, to be specific, right? Yeah. And we benchmarked. So, and this is where I say it's a bit of both. So there was a lot of ideas that were put on the table, but when we briefed it in, I remember some of the examples we pulled up was that iconic sunlight ad, where it's the sunlight and then it goes small, and the different iterations of what that the sunlight is to South Africans, right?
Yeah.
It's a shampoo, it's a toothpaste, it's a things for dreadlocks, it's a, you know what I'm saying? We know that iconic sunlight, ad. And we also even referenced there's the Channel O class of 76, where instead of Hector Peterson, it's a cap and a gown. So we referenced those simple, iconic South African ads that historically did well, especially around kind of like important holidays in the country, Youth Day, Heritage Day. So that was the benchmark, was that the greatest and most iconic pieces that we've seen in the country are often the most simple ones, you know. So there was that as kind of like, this is the bar. It's simple, but when everybody sees it, they immediately like, oh damn, okay, I get it, I see it. Oh, well done. So there was we were benchmarking against some of the simplest, most iconic ads.
I think, what you reference really brings it home a lot more, like some of these iconic moments. And sometimes these iconic moments or experiences we have unwittingly or without realizing that we're even having them, right? We look to, there was a time, especially in film, on not going to mention on what platform, but in film, there was a time, especially last year and the year before, where there was a lot of political or politically charged or driven series, movies, especially about South Africa. And we tend to go to some of those places sometimes, even in advertising. What was it, Kenosi, about heritage that made it the right place, the right time? Because what I've noticed is that Heritage Day, Heritage Month, has become increasingly more competitive among especially heritage brands. I suppose the answer's right there, but I feel like it's becoming a lot more competitive. In fact, I saw two brands. In fact, there's a third one. I feel like Testic did something some years ago around Heritage Day, Heritage Month with Makosa, if I'm not mistaken. Cheppies was doing something. Vaseline did something. What is it about Heritage Day or Heritage Month that makes it the right time, the right space?
So I think I have a little bit of a different answer for you, because I think the right time is not only in Heritage Day and Heritage Month. I think Heritage Day, Heritage Month gives you a platform to amplify the role that your brand plays in people's lives. But I think it was so important for us, specifically on Vaseline, to recognize that the heritage that's linked to Vaseline transcends the different times of years that might be there. Yes, there might be a conversation that we tap into and that we want to start and kick off in Heritage Month because it's the right moment. However, I think what was important for us was just to take it back once again, is that the brand doesn't hold heritage because of what we've done. The brand holds heritage because of where people have taken it. And it was so important for us to take a moment, take a step back, to listen to how people are using the brand. What are the memories? What are the stories that they're telling around our brands? And you'll find that, the particular story we tapped into here of, Gogo, getting you ready for school, lathering you with Vaseline, is a moment that many of us experienced outside of even Heritage Month. So I think for us, Heritage Month was a springboard to kick off the conversation that actually Vaseline has been around, for over 150 years in South Africa now specifically, but has been around in a way that facilitates care, that facilitates love in South Africa in different moments. And we use the month just to kick off that conversation, but recognizing that conversation, that feeling, those moments live beyond Heritage Month. And that was quite important for us to bring it back to as well.
I think the flip side of that coin, though, is 100% certainly insights and how people experience the product transcends a particular holiday or a day. But the flip side of that coin is that Heritage Day and any holiday in a digital first world, people are outside of the routine of the usual scrolling, right? You're not going to the office. You're a little bit more relaxed. You can scroll leisurely, and any piece, and there's obviously conversations on the timeline around the holiday. Whatever is happening will grab the attention. So if the president is addressing a crowd at a stadium in Soweto, that will catch, and he does something, then the Taliban starts talking about that. So what's important about dropping certain pieces on specific days is that you've got a little bit more of a captive audience that isn't distracted by their normal day-to-day 9-to-5 grind, rat race, commute to work, kids at school, all of that stuff. And because of that captive audience, it's the right time to drop a piece and making sure that it's relevant to the day. So that's another very important part. I think, heritage brands have the privilege of yes, showing up anytime, but if you're smart, then knowing the importance of timing is also, so we use the Hector Peterson Channel O piece. It dropped on Youth Day, which we know that's why it resonated, because throughout the year we're not talking about Hector Peterson and the June 76 riots. We're not talking about them. On that particular day, the nostalgia, the emotions, the memories, the stories around June 16 are heightened, right? Therefore, if you drop the right piece on that day while the conversation is at its height, then there's a better likelihood of that the uptake is higher, and there's more conversations around your piece. So timing is as important, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Kenosi, Mntana Ka Gogo, the phrase itself, I mean, you said it in very many languages, and of course it translates in any language. It's a cultural thing. It translates across the globe, actually, which is another thing that I kind of want to talk about. But the phrase itself, while it is very relevant, while it is culturally relevant, it strikes a chord with many people. To other people, it's a phrase that they don't resonate with. Did you ever have concerns about the fact that we might, while really taking our audience with us, we might be alienating or excluding some people? Did that ever cross your mind at all? It's no secret that South Africa is one of the most unequal countries in the world, and that inequality shows itself most visibly in schools, especially in townships and rural areas. That's why, as the lead creative, we are proud to collaborate with Threads for Ikasi, a foundation whose cause is close to our hearts. They provide school uniforms, dignity packs, and other essential items to children in under-resourced communities, helping them go to school feeling confident, with pride and dignity. On this show, we talk about how creativity and brands shape the world. Threads for Ikasi does exactly that, shaping futures one child at a time. Because when a child walks into a classroom feeling confident, it changes everything. It changes how they view themselves, how they learn, and it transforms how they imagine what's possible. These are future leaders, future creatives, and future agents of change. To help them show up as their best selves, visit threadsforik.org and sponsor a child today. Let's help them where it matters most. Check the link in the description and sponsor a child. Enjoy the rest of this episode.
No, I don't think that was a primary consideration. And that's because I think when we were looking at, and when we look at, creating for Vaseline, particularly petroleum jelly, we have our people front and center and in mind. So you know exactly who you're creating a piece for. And I think being specific like that is very important, right? Because it's one thing to say you want to be inclusive and create for everybody. but that almost can dilute your efforts or can dilute what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to get out of this. And I think the magic comes in being quite specific and recognizing that this is who we're speaking to. These are the memory tracks that we're tapping into. These are, and once again, I speak about, the stories that we've heard from consumers and people themselves. These are not things that we sat in a boardroom and thought, where does this come from? It's real stories of people telling us how Vaseline showed up in their lives and in their worlds. So in many ways, we were reflecting back what already, the consumers that we're trying to connect with have told us or have referred back to us. So it was not a consideration that, we might actually be leaving anyone out. It was more so, who are we speaking into and who are we including, and what conversation are we bringing to the surface that perhaps hasn't really been one that we've seen, particularly on social or in the digital world or in the space. So I think that was the lead thought behind us using a line like Mntana Ka Gogo. And I think what is important within that, I think Tumi will speak more to it because he was a lot closer to how we landed on that line. But the one thing that I always sort of drive when we talk as a team is language, right? Because we forget language. Or when we do try and use language, it can come across as disingenuous. You kind of use a phrase that is trending at the moment and you tap into it. But when we looked at Vaseline, the importance for me was, how do you use language authentically? How do you use language the way that your people, your brand advocates, people who are showing up for Vaseline PJ or petroleum jelly in the space, use the language as well? So you want to be authentic in that space. And that was the importance for me in tapping into that particular line, but more so tapping into a phrase that then translated even globally, which was quite a surprise for us, because the initial immediate thought would be like, oh no, this is South African vernacular, it's not going to go outside. It went very far. And we were having people asking us for translations of that, and I think that's what you want. That's what authenticity buys you, that's what authenticity gets you.
If you're enjoying The Lead Creative, please share this episode with your network and hit follow or subscribe. Enjoy the show. Yeah, and I get this sense of this, I suppose, this big difference that we always kind of look for in marketing and creativity, of showing people to themselves rather than looking as though you're on the outside looking in, right? It's like mirroring people being within rather than being without or outside of, kind of looking in. How do you land on this idea, Tumi, or this line? Because Kenosi mentioned how you landed on this line and the language and the use of language. How did that come about?
I must say the line was secondary to the visual. And when we landed on the visual, before we even shot it, by the way, when we landed on, I remember Tumi Moutlana coming to me and say, hey, so they had other ideas on the table, and then impulsively they're like, hey man, hey, there's this other idea that we're toying around with. We're not sure about it. I'm like, what is it? Then they like, so when you apply Vaseline and then like your face gets good. My ears just went. I was like, whoa, okay, all right. Let's go there. I remember saying, forget about all your other ideas. There's magic here, right? And then we're like, how do we capture that, right? But so the line was secondary because we understood that everybody, this transcends language. That moment, that feeling of that core memory of all the hands applying Vaseline vigorously but with love. Most people can relate to that. And then we were like, then how we landed on the line, to answer your question, was in that moment that your face was getting this strong application of love, what are some of the things that the person applying would say to you? And then we started in the room, like we started talking. I remember Tando is a fellow creative director, and she's like, my grand would say to my child or to me, Mntana Ka Gogo. It's like a term of endearment, right? Sisi nana. There's all these phrases that we threw around, but we were like, let's go with that one, because there's other languages that we've seen get a lot of airtime in general in the country, but hey, let's be a little. It's Heritage Day, so Heritage Day also gives us a canvas to tap into other languages. And this Mntana Ka Gogo is obviously a closer phrasing, and we're like, that's nice. We like that. It feels different, It's not the usual Zulu or Setswana lines that you might see on a lot of creative. So let's go there. So that's how that line came about. It's once we landed on capturing. How do we capture that feeling and evoke that nostalgia and those core memories of Vaseline being applied to your faces? There was always an accompanying phrase. There was always, and that's part of the core memory. It's being applied vigorously to your face, but there's these sweet, gentle words that are coming out of the mouth of this person that's applying the product, the Vaseline PJ to your face, because they're proud of you, because now you look like, Mntana Ka Gogo, man. Now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, it feels a lot more Zulu. But again, for me, it's not even about the language. It's about what's familiar. It's about what feels familiar. Because, we watch a lot of South African as well as American and every other movie. And in all these movies, there tends to be, especially with darker skin, where Vaseline or petroleum jelly is always in the house somehow, even outside our shores. And I think, to your point, Kenosi, that it resonated outside of South Africa. That said, though, great creative really does a lot to generate brand love. You mentioned the brand love piece a bit earlier, but not a lot of great creative moves the needle, right? So I suppose the question, I guess, is how much did this work move the needle, number one, in terms of, I suppose, sales, brand love, all the things that you measure against it, and what surprised you about where else it also shifted things, Kenosi?
Yeah, I think when you're speaking about a brand like Vaseline, a mammoth of a brand, a brand that has outlived even us collectively here that are in discussion, you're dealing or you're working with a brand that has an immense amount of love. There's a very strong equity that's linked to the brand, and in many ways, as somebody who heads up the brand, it's a humble reminder that this is not your thing. This is a brand that lives, in communal spaces. It's a brand that's co-created. And I think that understanding, that level of knowing and knowledge coming into this year specifically has really made the difference for us in terms of how we approach marketing, or how we approach Vaseline specifically this year, right? Because it's really been around sort of amplifying the love that's already there. I think the one thing, though, that heritage brands often have, or brands that have been around for a while often have, the challenge that they're faced with is, how do you remain relevant with different generations, with different times? How do you not become that brand that was like, hey, that was Nkgono's brand, Gabo Auntie. I don't vibe with it anymore. How do you remain relevant with a younger audience? And I think it's been a delicate balance for us on Vaseline this year with all the different pieces of work that we've done. But the magic with petroleum jelly and this particular piece, Mntana Ka Gogo, that we tapped into was that that nostalgia, that reminder that, this is something that's been passed down from generations is equally a way to keep the brand relevant, is equally a way to keep it top of mind and salient as well. And I think that's what this campaign gave us. One of the things that we're really starting to develop and tap into now is the role of virality in marketing, right? Virality has always been around, but I think bringing it back to what is the role of virality in building equity? What is the role of virality in delivering business results? And this is one that's going to go down as a case study for us internally to say, actually, it's something that, or it's a campaign that we managed to execute for a given moment in time, but the halo effect was so large that we are able to track its impact across the equity of the brand. We're able to track, different KPIs that perhaps we weren't looking at historically. Sentiment is something that we're able to look into. We're able to look into how do we remain relevant in the right conversations with the right cohorts or the right groups. And I think one of the things that was truly amazing for this was to see how many young consumers picked it up. So how many young moms were like, great, now I'm handing the keys down to my child and I'm vigorously rubbing the love in. I have a little 1-year-old and she knows, and the Vaseline comes out, you know. So it was really, I think, a really cool thing for us to see that not only does it help us remain relevant with a younger audience, which I always think is a challenge for heritage brands, is bring it back to the newer generation. So not only did it manage to do that, but it did that by tapping into the already existing brand love that that is already there for the brand.
Yeah. To me, two things come out a lot in what Kenosi says: relevance and heritage. And I suppose co-creation is another one. I want to stick to these three, but sort of with a caveat. So there's a very fine line to be struck between relevance, and I'm almost imagining, like an older uncle at a family function saying he's relevant by sort of seeming younger. You know what I mean? Like there's a very fine line to be struck in being relevant as a heritage brand and being gimmicky. Right? There's a very fine line between what relevant looks like, because we're talking about this, what great creative does and how far it can go. Sometimes what looks like great creative to the creative can be gimmicky. And we've seen this with a lot of work out there. And also what looks relevant can be in the, older uncle's phrasing of relevant in a family function by trying to seem younger. How do you strike this balance for a heritage brand that's been co-created for 150 years? Where's that delicate point?
Hey, man, it is a delicate point, and I think it is, you have to, in every single moment and every step of the process, you're walking you're dancing this delicate dance between making sure that you don't alienate your primary cohorts, right? And I'm going to use two Vaseline pieces to show you the importance of walking that fine line, right? We know there was the Verified campaign, which did very well at Cannes, right? Verified was great because it kind of showed that relevance aspect to a much younger audience. We know it was very, very digital first, social first, TikTok heavy, right? But that piece couldn't do and didn't do what Mntana Ka Gogo just did. In that it hit everybody and I think spilled beyond South African borders more than Verified did, right? Yeah. They both did a very important job. The one is setting up relevance for future cohorts and audiences, whereas the other is reinforcing that this is your primary core. Don't leave them behind. Don't alienate them. Don't forget that these are your people, and we saw the cut across in terms of age and demographics and so it's understanding who sure, there's a future goal to say that we need to make sure that we're future-proofing ourselves as a brand. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we do it in such a way that we take our existing base, which is the majority of our audience or our customer base, with us in the process. I think I'm going to use banks as an example. There's financial institutions. I think they have a similar challenge in that they can't migrate so quickly that they alienate the core of your
customer base,
your customer base, right? So one of the banks that is actually a client of ours, Standard Bank, it has a lot of innovation, but they very measured in how quickly they release their innovation, right? So because they understand that we still have this base here that is now sitting in that wealth bracket. Right? They've got the spend, and we don't want to lose that bracket that has the buying power, right? We don't want to lose them, because if we move too quickly and they feel left behind, they're going to take their business somewhere else, right? Yeah. So that's very important for brands to understand that times are moving fast, but you need to move at the right pace for your communities. Yeah.
So, Kenosi, we keep describing Mntana Ka Gogo, the work, and we haven't really gone into what this work is, right? Because for the size of it, for someone who's listening, they may think this was a big campaign with TV ads and all the rest of it. Can you very briefly describe what this work really was and the simplicity that we refer to, which we haven't really described?
I think Tumi touched on it, honestly. I think the simplicity was capturing an emotion as a visual. That's the best way I can put it. That's where the magic or the simplicity came in, is being able to take, and I mean, we can label the emotion love, care, nurturing, but being able to take that and translate it into that sort of visual with Granny's hands or Gogo's hands, preparing you, getting you ready for the day. It said so much more. I think this was really, when we talk about picture speaks 1,000 words, this was really one of the moments where a picture speaks 1,000 words had come to life. So, no, this was not a massive rolled out campaign that we were going to 360 through the line, all of the wonderful terms that we use. Campaign that we had multiple sort of support channels up our sleeve for. And in fact, I think what we did is when we started to see where it was going, then we started to amplify the specific channels where it made the most sense. But I think where it was captured as a simple sort of execution was really in the imagery, because that's how it went live. It was an image that went live on our social media channels. That was the very first and essentially in the beginning phases, the only thing that we did that went live for this for Heritage Day.
To me, there's something that I've noticed brands doing now, and maybe you can give us an insight into whether this is that direction, why it's happening, and if it should happen more. And this thing that I'm noticing is the increased investment on a social media post, for instance, that you want to really blow up. Like this is one such instance, whereas social media or a social media post used to be seen as, let's just create a content plan, 10 posts a month. Here's the strategy. Here are the images. Here are the brand assets. Here's the stock footage or images or the pictures, the images that we have as a brand kind of thing. What has happened, or has there been a turning point, or is there a turning point in investing more love, more assets, more into sort of social media and social media posts by brands?
The age-old tug of war between creative agencies and media agencies. The tug of war. I think, there's a song, "Video Killed the Radio Star."
Yeah.
Well, cell phones have killed the TV star and the internet star. Like cell phones, you think about it, right? The first thing that you do when you wake up, you reach for your device.
Yeah.
It is so in hand. It is so part of our lives. So look at this life cycle. I wake up, I reach for my phone, I maybe check my calendar, I check any messages that came in while I was sleeping. Well, it wakes you up, alarm, right? I don't set alarms, but I know people that they need their phone, alarm, right? Then let's say you meditate or read or whatever, your morning reading, you do it on your device, right? And then you run or you walk, Strava. Now you Strava app, you come back. While you stop Stravaing, maybe you start checking kind of like the calendar and maybe emails and messages with the work groups. The family chat is also good morning. You get the sparkly good morning, have a blessed day thing from the gogo in the family or the aunt in the family sends to the family group. Like the phone has become so much a part of our lives, and I think that the numbers speak for themselves in terms of mobile device penetration, not just in South Africa but in the continent, right? Especially in emerging markets, you're South Africans, you're Kenyans, you're this, you're that, you're that. The device, we cannot ignore how how much it is a part of people's lives. So the investment is making sense that, yes, that's where we talk about social first as a strategy, as an approach for a lot of our work. And I think Mntana Ka Gogo could have gone to a newspaper, could have gone to a billboard, could have gone to a TV first, but it went social first, it went to the device first, and the results speak for themselves. So gone are the days where we can ignore the device and, we're looking at the big channels. The big channels have their place. Radio is still a relevant medium in South Africa. It's still got mass reach. It really does. TV has its moments depending on the placement, or the correct placement of the media, big match days or et cetera, et cetera. But the cell phone device is not stopping, in terms of how much it's penetrating even to the lowest income people. They now have devices. They can WhatsApp. My housekeeper, my helper, she's lovely, and we communicate on WhatsApp to check how far she is, or if there's anything she needs to remind you. Hey, don't forget to buy Stay Soft, or don't forget to buy Handy, don't forget to buy Vaseline. So the investment, I think, correlates with the usage of a mobile device.
If you're enjoying The Lead Creative, please share this episode with your network and hit follow or subscribe. Enjoy the show. Kenosi, I've got two questions for you, starting from what Kenosi was just describing about the investment makes sense because of device penetration and device usage. And this is really a question around what informs where an idea goes. Because in some instances, so with the virality, so this was a social post that went really viral, that went really big, which kind of tells you that the resonance is a lot bigger than we had initially thought. This was just a passing idea for a post on Heritage Day, around Heritage Month. And then I'm imagining that now that we've seen this, the Mntana Ka Gogo story can actually be taken further, right? Starting from social, whereas traditionally it's the opposite. Social becomes a support, and everything else becomes the base or the foundation, right? It's usually like that. So what informs you on the brand side that this has now gone this far and we should take it further, or this idea, while it's exciting, only belongs on social, as this did before it went viral? What informs those kinds of decisions?
So I think, first and foremost, maybe building on what Tumi's mentioned, if I can speak with my Unilever hats on now, not just Vaseline, we've had a fundamental shift in how we do marketing this year specifically. So globally, it's been announced that, our marketing approach now has moved to what we call building desired scale. And social first is a key principle of building desired scale. Now, if we unpack what it means to build desire and at scale, desire is intrinsic to creating a pull. It's not a push activity. You're not coming with an idea that you have as a corporate person who sits in a boardroom and pushing it onto different audiences. You're understanding where the different pulls for your brand actually sit, and you're tapping into it. And the reason we have this pillar, that references social first, is to exactly what Tumi was talking about, is understanding that as much as we are seeing the rise of the device, this is not new news for us, right? This was when we were studying marketing already. Like, digital is here, things are changing, the landscape is fragmented. But I think it's recognizing where the insights around desire can also sit. And we cannot take away, or we cannot negate the importance of the rise of social media, right? Social media carries conversation. Social media carries insight. People go to social media to get advice, even medical advice. People go to social media to actually tap into that. And I think it's recognizing that shift in where people are getting their advice, their referrals, their information from, and understanding that actually this is us taking a cut and paste approach and saying, okay, what we were doing before with the traditional way of marketing, we're going to apply it now in the social space. space. So understand that we actually have to completely flip the approach and understand, what is or native to social media and what's happening to social media. So it's the same thing now, to circle back to your question, it's the same sort of methodology that would apply to understanding where does an idea go. There's so much richness in social media. The minute you drop something, right, you already can see and start to pick up where it should go. People will tell you if you do social listening, if you understand the comments. Tumi mentioned that, there's people have a bunch of different phrases around what having Vaseline applied to your face and sides. And that is something that we then, listened to and understood as to, okay, where should this actually go? Where does it make sense for it to go next, for us to amplify? And then we built the ecosystem around that. So instead of us just saying, okay, this absolutely needs to be a TV advert, I think one of the things that was, quite dominant or predominant is also, the importance of language as sound. And so radio became a natural next step for us to then say, okay, we've got language from a print or in a print format, but language exists as sound. And how do you best translate that? Radio then becomes, a natural next step for us to go into. So I think when we look at where does an idea actually go, I think we look at leveraging social as a space to mine and to understand, the natural spaces and the natural pull points that go into, and then we lean into those, because that gives you better amplification versus if you try and, push a message in a particular direction or a particular way, purely based on our internal opinions.
And I think there needs to be a reframing of this tug of war. Is like, guys, Mntana Ka Gogo as a social post is essentially a print ad, except it's not printed, right? And it's the device has not changed. The what you call the formats. It's just the channel has changed, right? We still need film, except it's not going to TV first, We still need print ads, except they are static posts on social media. We still need audio, except it's going to live as a Spotify ad, perhaps, or it's going to live as a YouTube pre-roll. It's going to live as, you know what I'm saying? So it's understanding that we are still creating all these different formats, just how they're consumed is different, So that's I think I talked about that tug of war between media agencies and creative agencies. It's media. We're not fighting you. We're just saying you're just shifting perspective slightly, to make sure that we're casting the right kind of net in a way that catches the right kind of fish. So that's very important as well, to just to understand that it's just a different channel. But we still want to see moving pictures. We still want to hear sounds and create soundscapes and theater of the mind. You still want to see beautiful visuals that stop you scrolling. The same way that if you were paging through a newspaper, you'd stop on that full page ad and be like, hey, this is beautiful, and you'd want to cut it out and put it somewhere. Now we're not cutting out, we're screenshotting, and we want to share it with friends and family to WhatsApp groups. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing.
I'm not saying you are showing your age or anything to me with wanting to cut out posters, but I get you. but I get you. I'll come back to you, Kenosi. I'll stick with you with this one. So we've spoken about the fact that this campaign really traveled. It went beyond our borders. Even though the language was a South African language, it really struck a chord and it resonated. Did this influence your internal conversations at brand level? And if so, how?
I think the surprising answer to this might be no. So perhaps there's a yes component and there's a no component. The reason I say no, though, and I lead with no, is because we were already having these conversations on Vaseline at a global scale. So South Africa happens to be one of the lead markets for petroleum jelly, for us as a brand. And anytime we have a conversation around what we should be executing, what should be the next sort of step and the next level, we always look at what is happening within the space of South Africa with our consumers, and how do we then leverage that and essentially influence and shape the plan. We have a very, very close-knit relationship with our global teams already, and so it's always a co-created sort of conversation when it comes to Vaseline internally from a global space as well. It's never done in isolation or, in pockets. Tumi referenced the verified the verified campaign. We were one of the 3 lead markets that went live with that campaign. So very much whenever there is a thought or a suggestion or a comment ideation that happens in the global space, it then becomes a conversation, a collaborative conversation with us as a local team, and similar vice versa. If we have a thought around a campaign, an idea, etc., we lean into the global brand community that's there. So I think that's always been there from a Vaseline brand community and brand team relationship and engagement perspective. I think the part that is the yes of this is, essentially having seen that a campaign that could have been so specific for South Africa, that was crafted for South Africa, in South African vernacular, actually went beyond different borders. It went to the US. It went incredibly far, and it got us, tapping into, even from a TikTok space, the different stories that are being told globally about the application on Vaseline. That seems to be something that, happens across the world. We haven't cracked why, it has to be so vigorous. We're still waiting for people to tell us, is the magic in the vigor, or where is it? But that seems to be something that people do naturally across the globe. And I think so the conversation has really been that, or the unlock, or something that's just, surfaced itself, is you can actually develop something that's quite specific to a market, but if the insight travels, it can be something that lives beyond or spills over into the global space as well. I think our natural sort of, as marketers, our natural space or habitat is for us to see a global framework or toolkit and think, okay, how do I localize this? But really the learning here has been, how much of it do you really need to localize if it has, insights that transcends the different borders? And I think that's a very exciting and interesting space for us as a team.
Kenosi, we usually have a question that our guest leaves for our next guest. So think of it as our past guest passing the mic to you. And one of our previous guests was the Luri's CEO, Pritesh Suraj. And the question he left was, how can agencies and brands build better relationships? How can they work as partners instead of working as opposed forces?
Okay, so there's only one word that comes to mind, and I hope Tumi's heard me say it multiple times: chemistry. And I've always said, when we kicked off the relationship with the VML team, one of the key things that I said is, we really need to work on or understand the chemistry. Yes, there are a couple of other things that you put as a laundry list of things that you want. You're looking for this kind of team who can deliver this work, etc. But I think the key thing for me was also just understanding the chemistry of the team. And this is not, I'm not speaking of chemistry as this mystical thing that immediately happens when we see each other from across the room. I think chemistry is also something that's co-created, that's built over time. So one of the things that we do as the Vaseline team is we aim, and especially in the beginning of a relationship, we aim to spend as much time together as possible. So we'd have quarterly engagements and connects. I would be at the VML offices, the VML team would be at our offices, spending as much time as possible, because it's the only way that you build relationships. It's the only way that you can build the richness in relationships, and more so that you can build trust. You can't trust people that you don't know. And so I think it's one of the things that we oversee, especially now in, how we work remotely. And I think there's a space for that, and it's very important. But I think the one thing that we mustn't lose sight of is that when you speak about relationship in any context, it requires work, it requires efforts. And part of that work and that effort is making sure that we spend time together, making sure that we understand each other, making sure that we trust each other, and making sure that we have chemistry. Yeah. And that's how I think the biggest unlock for how agencies and clients effectively work better together going forward.
Yeah, that's a powerful one. And now, Tumi, it's your turn to pass the mic to our next guest. What question? No, actually, let me start with Kenosi. I'll come to you. So, Kenosi, it's your turn now to pass the mic to our next guest by leaving a question about creativity, marketing, their creative process, or thoughts on the industry.
Okay. I think I'll go with, what does the future of branding look like in the next couple of decades?
Okay, an interesting one.
Nice.
Tumi, Tumi, you are next now. I'll come to you. So, of course, we ask our guests to leave a question for our next guest, and think of this as passing the mic. So, the last guest that we had who passed the mic to you was Ahmed Tilly, the industry legend, founder and creative consultant of Number 10. And the question he left for you, which is a fairly simple one, is, well, simple is relative. What's stopping you from having fun at work? His view is that people are leaving the industry. People don't want to come to the marketing and creative industries because it seems all so serious. And as we all say, we're not brain surgeons here. We are creating work that should resonate. So and part of it, according to him, is that it's because we aren't having fun in the work that we do. So what's stopping you, Tumi, from having fun at work?
I think, oh man, it's an easy question, but it's so layered, and it's actually not, it's not as easy because there are pressures, hey man, the capitalism machine has to keep ticking over. We cannot deny that. And, when investors, when shareholders are not getting their return, that pressure filters down. And sometimes fun gets put aside because we have business to do. We have to turn over, So I think there's those realities of the nature of businesses that at the highest level there needs to be a return. There needs to be a return on investment. So, but I'm going to speak for advertisers. I'm going to speak for creatives and say, guys, let's bring the fun back. And even brands. What happened to dropping off donuts for your clients, or clients coming drop off chocolates for us? What happened to saying, hey guys, let's ditch this morning's Scrum staff meeting. Let's ditch it. Let's go sit in the garden and go play a game of whatever for 30 minutes. What happened to, I think you create a culture of fun is probably the best place where we need to start is let's bring the fun back into how we work, irrespective of the client agency relationship. Bring back the fun into your immediate working environment, your immediate department. Make it fun for yourselves. And then let that start spilling over. And I think if agencies start having fun in-house, it'll start to spill over into the broader industry, the advertising industry. We're not having fun anymore as creatives. Like, we are creatives, guys. Like, you have fun on the weekend, and then you 9 to 5, and you're like, we used to be, the world used to call us rock stars. They're like, you guys play. You have slides in the office, and you have crazy things in the office. Just even in the way that you shop fit your agency, there's no more fun. Bring back the fun into the way into the work environment. I think that's what I would say we need to do.
Awesome. Tumi, now it's your turn to leave a question for our next guest, and leave a question about their creativity, the creative industry, marketing, thoughts on the industry, or maybe even life. What would your question be?
When are we going to accept that AI can never replace the human touch? When are we going to pop the AI bubble and come back to creating great human-centric ads?
Okay. Tumi and Kenosi, thank you so much for making time. This was a hugely insightful conversation. And congratulations once again on taking on this journey and landing on this seemingly simple piece of work that resonated so much that, that some of us are calling the ad of the year. And it came up just recently. So thanks for making time. Thank you for listening to The Lead Creative. Did you get one insight that's worth sharing from this episode? please share it with your network or your friends. Pop me some of your ideas and innovative finds on Twitter on @Mongezi. This podcast is available on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also find me on mongezi.com.